Well, I'll pinch myself to start off with, because somehow I've ended up talking to Marcus Harris, who on this channel needs no introduction as the person who brought us Julian in Famous Five all the way back in the 70s. So Marcus, great to be catching up with you. Um, and you've got some pretty big news. Obviously, there was a hint in the opening credits to this video. You've got some pretty big news for us.
Well, first of all, hello again to you, and hello to all of your watchers and listeners. I'm absolutely delighted to be on this channel here with you today, and I look forward to the opportunity of being live somewhere in Australia with you at some point. So
It'd be fantastic.
we'll have to work that into the schedule.
Absolutely. So the news is you've got a book out, just about
It,
released.
it is literally, I've got 1 week to go, so you guys are getting this news hot off the press. The book is called Running Away. There you go. Oh, I have a copy here for you to see. Oh, does the camera see it? There it is.
Fantastic. Yep.
Um, so I mean, I was really lucky that when I was 12 and I went through the auditions for the Famous Five, and my ambition was to be on television. And I went for a few auditions for a few things, but then when I got the call from my agent to say they want you to go for an audition for the Famous Five, I loved the Famous Five. When I was a kid growing up, the Famous Five were my heroes. I'd read all of the books, so when I got that call, I was really excited. And
Yeah.
I went up to the auditions, and there were 5,000 kids going. It was absolutely mad. So to be successful through that process and to then have been in the Famous Five and to have recorded that and to have lived the life with Gary, Jennifer, and Michelle was just absolutely phenomenal. And that was like big tick in the box. The book has been something that's been niggling away at me for absolutely ages. I've always written, and I've always played around with ideas, poems, books, this sort of thing, but I've never had the courage to actually take this out into the world. And then, I mean, you know this, Brett. I managed to have a stroke 2 years ago, where I was literally half an hour away from being dead. My
We
wife was
did hear
incredible.
about that through I think Gary let us know through some of the fan pages there on Facebook. And that was, yeah, that was sobering news. But I didn't quite realize it had been that bad.
It was a hemorrhagic stroke, which is one of the toughest ones to beat. And my wife was taken into the little room at the back of the hospital, in the hospital, and sat down by the surgeon when I came in and said, "Be prepared. He's only got a 2.5% chance of walking out of here." But because she got me into the hospital and on the operating table within an hour of me hitting the bedroom floor, and the ambulance drivers and the amazing hospital staff, I made a full recovery, and I've literally, touch wood, walked away with nothing. But I laid there in my hospital bed and I thought back to the Famous Five. I thought back to my QVC presenting days. I thought about the amazing concerts that I MC for, and various other events and things I do. And I realized that there were two things left undone in my life.
Right.
One was one was to catch a bus from John O'Groats in Scotland to Land's End in Cornwall. And for your viewers that don't know the geography, that's the very far north to the very far south. Now, I
So
don't know what the bus,
did you manage to
sorry,
do that, Marcus, since you've mentioned it?
no, I haven't done, because it requires a bus pass. And although I might be old now, I'm not old enough for a bus pass. So I'm waiting for the day when they give me my bus card. And it's called a twirly as well, because when you go up and it's too early, they say, "Oh, it's too early for that." So you have to put it away and do something else. So that was one thing that I wanted to do and hadn't done for obvious reasons. And the other was this, the thing that had been nagging away at me for ages, the thing about telling a story, a
Right.
completely separate story. It's not about me, it's about a completely different person. And actually having people buy the book and read the book and engage with my main character and his trials and tribulations and all these sorts of things. And yeah, so that's what drove me to it. I've done some amazing things. Oh, and also I was the mayor of my hometown, which I think you know about.
Yes,
And I had
I had read about that one, doing the research. And
yeah.
that one was something that you obviously were interested in. You just worked towards that and made your way up through local sort of council.
Yeah, I've done sort of the lower levels of council work. So I've been a town councillor, I've been a district councillor, and I stood to be a county, which is a sort of a region, if you like. I I rejoined the town council when I knew that there were some challenges that we faced, and it became clear that it needed it needed a bit of a strong hand, some strong decision making. So I offered myself as the mayor, and my colleagues very kindly accepted, put me in place, and then very kindly accepted me the second year as well. So we get elected every year as the mayor in Wallingford. And I
Right.
was very lucky and so privileged to do 2 years as the mayor of my hometown.
So you certainly get a lot done, Marcus. There's no doubt about it. And that's amazing that you were able to turn that health scare into that, that was the impetus to get you going with the book and get that done and get it ticked off the bucket list. So congratulations. I know there's a lot
Thank you
of
very much.
people, including me with projects that are half done or ideas that haven't quite made it all the way through. So it's fantastic to get it done. If you don't mind, can I ask you a couple of famous five questions, and then we'll come back
Fire
to the
away.
book.
Gary is the
Yeah.
expert. He knows all the answers, but I'll do my very best.
Yes, no, yeah. Well, one thing I was going to ask is, it's coming up to the 50-year anniversary of that first of those two summers you spent in the New Forest there. So you can still remember something of those years. It's been such a long time.
I can.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's great. So
But a
when
lot of
someone
it's
like me
ingrained in my
asks
memory.
you to cast your mind back, what springs to mind first and foremost in being part of the series and playing Julian for us?
Um, so many things that spring to mind. I mean, the whole audition process, um, the book signing that we did when the books and the TV series were first released in the UK, the chat shows that we did was a huge life. But the actual filming, the one that I remember most is that
Right.
one, Five on a
Yep. On
Hike.
hike. Yep.
And the
Got it.
reason I remember that, yeah. And the
Yeah.
reason I remember that is you can see we're all on a raft. You can't actually see my face on this cover. We were all on a raft. It was the hottest day that I could remember. Well, at the age of 13, it was probably the hottest summer's day that I'd ever experienced in my young life at that time.
Right.
And so often we were put into rucksacks and we had cagoules on and we were in cars and we are doing all sorts of things, hot and stuffy. And then we got to Five on a Hike, and of course the hunt was through gloomy water, which meant we had to go out on the raft. Now you just have to ask yourself, how many parents would let four kids and a dog go out on a rickety raft like that into the middle of a lake, looking for something in the gloomy water? But that was amazing. We all had a chance, or Gary and I both had a chance to jump in. Gary wasn't
Yes.
as keen as, but I loved it.
Yeah. And I think that was part of the magic of the series when you mentioned that. And something that couldn't happen now is that back in the 80s, they were a little more adventurous in terms of what they let you guys do. Some of the climbing, some of the ladders, and some of the work like that being out on a raft. I think it made it quite real for us as kids watching you because it was like the books. So I remember that scene quite clearly, the raft scene. I think there were a couple of frogmen behind you holding the raft up too from memory. You can see them.
But no.
You can see them in the shot there, just to make sure you didn't sink. I don't think you can see them on the cover. Um,
It
I
would
don't know.
make a
Maybe
lot
I'll
of
send you a
sense.
picture at some point.
Yeah, it would make a lot of sense. I think that probably must have happened. I just don't remember it.
Yeah, no, of course. Well, there'd be so much that you'd have to take in. Um, so that was one of the great locations. That was Solly Pond there. Also, I think one of the things that made the series so special was the guest cast, all the actors that were quite famous that came along and spent an episode or two with you. Do you remember one in particular, or any stories about some of the guest cast that came to work with you?
I think what was so lovely for me is that I didn't know any of these people.
Right.
Gary knew everybody. I mean, Gary's so clever. Gary knew everyone who came along. Was he knew stories about them. I just met them as lovely people, and they came along and we worked with them, and I love listening to their stories. So no, I think it was just generally we had a fantastic family of people that joined us and then went away again. Some amazing actors and some incredible performances from a lot of people, animal and human. And I suppose the one that always surprises me to this day is Rupert Graves, who came along and played one of the supporting roles, which must have been because I noticed from his IMDb that he credits 1978 as the start of his career.
I
And as you
think it
know
was
now,
probably his first.
say again,
I think it probably was his first, one of the very first things he did.
yeah. And I remember him being quite a shy lad when he came and worked. I doubt he'll remember me these days, but you never
Well,
know. I might drop him a note.
that was, I think, Down to the Sea, one of the last ones he did. All right, well, fantastic. So one of the obviously that was 2 amazing years in the New Forest, and then one of the things that's of interest to me is the couple of years after that, when the series finished up. But what was life like for you in those next couple of years? Um, how did was it the fact that you were that famous? I mean, as a kid in Australia, I don't know how it would have been for you back in England, but the series was big. How did it change your life in those couple of years, and what came next for you?
First of all, the day we finished was absolutely devastating. Um, 2 years when you're age 13, 12, 13, 14, those 2 years are like a sixth of your life. And living with a new family, living in this exciting, amazing environment where they built you cabins and they built you roomscapes and they built you cellars and caves and put you in rowing boats, and you can't believe how lucky you are to live like that. And then suddenly it all stopped, and they gave us our bikes and they packed us off. And I remember my dad came to collect me from set on that particular day, and he took me off to camp, just me and him, because he knew I would need to decompress and work out what was going on. So that was the first thing that I remember about it all finishing. I was also quite excited by the idea that they might write new material and that we might do a third series. Sadly, the Enid Blyton family were very strict about that at the time. Not so now, as we've got lots of new variations, new storylines. One of which I was in, of course, with From Freund in Germany. Made a guest appearance in the From Freunde, the very first one they did over there.
I did
Um,
see that. That was one of the other
did
amazing
you?
things about the series, about the stories themselves, but certainly the 70s adaptation is it went around the world, including, of course, here to Australia where I saw it.
Yeah, it was amazing, and all of us got so much attention from mail. I mean, it used to come by mail then. It would come electronically now, I guess. But we used to have it used to be hours and hours of answering as many messages as you possibly could. Although I did make a remote guest appearance on a German game show literally last week because it was the guy who presents it. It was his big birthday this year, and he'd been telling everybody how when he was must have been 12 or 13 or something, he'd written to me as Julian to say, please, could you come to my birthday party in Germany? By then I would have been a little bit older and I obviously couldn't get over there to his birthday. But he'd remembered it all this time. And so his, excuse me, his colleagues remembered and they asked me to record this little piece to camera just to say happy birthday to him for now and that I was sorry that I couldn't make it. And, that was literally last week. So even until this day, we still get asked to do things, be involved in things, like the Fun Freund, where they asked me to do a guest appearance there, various different events that we go to. So not only for the 2 years, to come back to your question, not only the
Yep.
2 years when we got straight out, which was a massive loss because the way of life that we'd had for 2 years for me had gone. And I had to go back to school and I had to go back to jobbing auditions and doing the sort of things I could do.
Back to
But then
normal life as opposed to that magic world that is Famous Five.
but it wasn't totally normal life either, because you're quite right. I mean, I would walk down the street and someone would recognize me and come and ask for an autograph. And it's like, in what world now would that happen? I'd love it if someone came up and asked me for my autograph now. Back then it was a regular sort of occurrence. And in fact, I went to see a rugby match in Ireland. That's like Aussie rules football, but oh, you guys are brilliant at rugby, so all know you're world leaders in rugby, so you know completely what rugby is. Um, and I went over to Ireland to watch Ireland England playing rugby, and I was in a bar with all of my friends from the village, and these two girls came up to me and said, "You were Julian in the Famous Five," and there was me. I was 40 something at the time, and they just recognized me and they came up and they asked my autograph. And I did think my friends had set it up, but apparently they said not, and it was all just genuine. So all of my life, I've enjoyed that experience. I've never done anything on TV or film to remotely compete with that. I've done lots of stuff, but it's all been very small parts. So I really did start at the very top of this business and work my
You
way down.
you started with the bang. Yeah, that's true. It's something that even now is still on TV. I think, isn't it, over there on the ITV streaming? I think you can, if you wanted
Yeah.
to, Marcus, tonight, you could sit down and watch yourself, which is an amazing thought.
I could, except my wife wouldn't let me. She got fed up with that quite a few years ago.
But it's not on the menu for family viewing. So that's fantastic. Getting back then to the book, I suppose. Love the cover, by the way. When I saw the cover, I thought, for some reason, I thought of one of those old TV shows, that Time Tunnel show. I think it was the way that the character is drawn there, walking off into the distance.
Yeah.
That sort of
But
the idea of
my
mystery
QVC
walking into the unknown there.
my QVC training always says you pick the product up and show it to everybody again. So there it is again, everyone. There's the book.
Yep.
But yes,
Oh,
you're right. There's the character. And it was supposed to sort of be, this is the dark of his life before. The rails indicate that the decision he made, and he did travel away from his problems by train. And this is supposed to be where he's walking to, which is the sort of it's supposed to be walking away from the dark. So yeah, it's nothing like the Famous Five. It is a thriller. It follows a man called JT, who is a young business person, a young sales guy, who gets himself into huge levels of debt and personal problems, borrows from some loan sharks, and ends up with some tragic consequences which attach to him. So he just literally stays on a train and goes from London all the way through to Cornwall, down to Plymouth and and then across to King's Khorsand, which is where the most of the scene's set. So for any of your audience, King's Khorsand is the most gorgeous little village right over the Cornwall-Devon border. And I didn't know it, but I went down there to investigate it, and it's beautiful. And that's where he runs away to, hoping to start a new life. And I don't know what it's like in Australia, but in the UK, we've got so much identification, and to do anything, you need to be able to prove who you are, driving license or whatever. So for my character, trying to start a life again with no identity was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be when I started the book. And it really follows him trying that and then being caught up by his past. So the gangsters find him, his ex-girlfriend finds him, uh, the police find him, and eventually his mother finds him. But now I may be letting too much out, so I'm not going to say too much
Yeah, that
more.
might be it for the hints.
That's probably enough of the hints, but
That's well and truly enough.
yeah, that's the
That's
book.
good. So, well and truly a thriller. Any inspiration in terms of authors or styles or movies? Or is it a bit of everything, or one particular style, or you know, something that perhaps is more your own thoughts?
I'd love to be able to say that I was inspired by some great and sort of, but it wasn't. It was, I've always told stories, and very often I tell them to either my kids or bore my wife with them or write them down. But for me, writing this book, I started with the character. I started with the idea that some people get to the end of their tether. I don't know if you have that expression in
No,
Australia, but
that's one that we certainly have.
when you get to the end of your tether, what happens? And tragically, some people can't take it and life, and that's the end for them, and that's very sad. Uh, or you're strong and you find a way through it, or you find a way to run away. And this was the start of the book. But as I started writing it, I didn't know how it was going to end. I didn't know where he was going or what he was going to encounter. And I've heard authors say this before, that the characters have a life of their own. Unless you're writing something like Harry Potter or some science fiction thing where you can suddenly get out a wand and wave it and you resolve a situation, if your character gets I don't know, gets lost in the woods, he can't suddenly be at home having a bowl of soup. You've got to actually work him through the woods. What's he going to meet in the woods? Who's he going to meet in the woods? How's he going to get out? And you have to be able to do this. And there's no shortcuts. You can't just say magically he was home. Sometimes you can, but generally speaking, you've got to work through the scenarios you put in place. And you also can't introduce characters who don't really have any consequence on the plot. So all of them have to move along together. So to answer your question, I started writing this like I start reading a book, which is I sit down on the train, I open my laptop, I reread what I'd written, and then I know where the story's going. And it literally comes out paragraph by paragraph. By the time I got to the end, I'm thinking, oh, good, that's what happens next then. I wonder what happens. I wonder what happens in the next chapter. And it's almost like that for me. And I hope that sense of excitement and energy comes across when people are reading it. Certainly, the people who've read it so far have said that it's got that momentum. So, yeah, so I'd like to
Fantastic.
claim some great thing, but not.
No, that's very interesting that that process sort of unfolded as you wrote it. So you will we'll certainly get that sense of adventure as we open the pages of the book and read it. Well, Marcus, I'm conscious of time. We've only got so much time here on the video chat. So once again, thank you so much for stopping by to tell us about the book and to catch up. Um, Look, it goes without saying, but you know, as Julian, you were fantastic, and you know, there's still fans around the world, everywhere, including me, who are so appreciative of that all those years ago. but also this exciting news about your book. I know Famous Five. I think Gail Renard talks about a Famous Five family. Um, so I think the fans are excited about it, and we'll get behind you and get into this book, and we're looking forward to discovering the story for ourselves.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It is lovely to be here. I mean, I've known about you and what you do for a long, long time. It's the first time that we've had a proper chance to sit down and have a chat. So
Been great,
thank you
hasn't
for
it?
thinking. Yeah, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you to everybody uh, out there who's loved the program, enjoyed the program. Yes, if you would like to buy the book, that will be absolutely fantastic. And if you don't, then not to worry. But hopefully, one day I'm going to get out to Australia, and then I can see if I can meet a few people and say hi. And if anyone's got the book, I can sign it for them.
Marcus Harris's debut novel, Running Away, is available to pre-order now from Amazon. Amazon.co.uk does have international shipping available to different countries, or you could check your local version of Amazon for details applicable to you. With thanks to Marcus Harris for joining us today at 5FAN Down Under, and best wishes for every success with Running Away.